guys, as you're aware, the Friday night live is going to be over gnomes, and Kirk has some really good information he's going to address on one where they'd had trouble with one, I guess, when he was a kid. So that's going to be very, very interesting. I'm going to be listening Friday night. But I wanted to share some encounters with some gnomes and to try to get you all up to speed and some talking points for Friday night. It says the encounters start with a woman known only as Tammy, who moved with her three children to a rural farmhouse near the town of Portville, California, in Joaquin Valley, just off the Tula River. In around 2004, things got weird almost immediately as Tammy claimed that she often felt a heavy sense of being watched, at times almost feeling the gravity of eyes upon her. But there was never anyone around during these episodes. It did not take long for her to realize that this phenomenon happened most often and mostly intensely when she was near the barn, which sat in a secluded corner of a rather large 100-acre property. Indeed, in the coming days the barn took on a quite sinister air, seeming to eliminate a cold chill, a thick sense of dread, and having the habit of soaking or spooking the many animals the family owned, including dogs, a cat, chicken, turkeys, and even a duck, although they tended to wander all over the property. None of these animals would go anywhere near the barn, as if repelled by some unseen force lodged within. Indeed, Tammy observed that none of the neighbors had observed. Animal strays or wildlife would not go near the spooky barn either. Whenever any animal passed the barn, they would give it a wide berth, and on many occasions would act strangely in its presence, staring at it as if something were in there staring back. The dogs would sometimes go nuts around the barn, barking and yipping excitedly, even though no one was there. Sometimes there could be heard strange noises coming from within the barn, which sounded like grunts, growls, and squeals. To add a layer to the thickening of the foreboding, Tammy claimed that she began to notice several of her animals had begun to go missing, gone without a trace, and it was immediately suspected that the missing barn had something to do with it. Tammy first chalked it all up to nerves and perhaps rats and wildlife nesting in the barn, and explained the missing animals away as having just run off, even been killed by coyotes. But one frightening... My computer's fighting with me again today. But one frightening encounter would convince her that it was something more than that. One evening, Tammy returned from town with her son in the parked car, but she exited the vehicle and went to get some groceries out of the trunk. She claimed that she saw fleeting movement into her peripheral vision. When she looked up, there was nothing there. And then when she went back to unloading the groceries, but almost immediately there was another movement, this time by an insidious laugh, very insidious. Standing there around 50 yards away was what she described as a humanoid creature about 3 foot tall, which sported a beard and was wearing baggy pants, a gold-colored shirt, and red pointy cap. For a moment, it stood there staring at her and her son with deep-set, dead black eyes, as if studying them. But then things took a turn for the sinister. Tammy would say they were around 50 yards away was what she described as a humanoid creature about 3 foot tall. It sported an ugly, baggy black pants and an ugly red beard. It just stood there staring at them. At this time, she heard a very freaky, evil-sounding chuckle. It looked in their direction, sound, and standing there at about 50 yards. It kept laughing. As soon as Tammy and her son had entered the house and slammed the door behind them, she began frantically telling her daughters about what had happened between the deep gasps. Somewhere outside, the strange old man was still cackling, and there was movement by the window. The terrified family looked out to see what it was and approached the window. They could see the top of the red-pointed cap loom into view, which was especially odd considering this particular window was located around 8 feet off the ground. Tammy closed the blinds and moved her children well away from the window, and waited there, breathlessly, until the thing finally went away. This would be the only direct sighting of the evil gnome, but Tammy would occasionally hear that ominous chuckling issuing forth from the shunned barn. She would later say, "After that night, whenever the dogs barked or howled, we were pretty sure we knew what it was barking at. We were also pretty sure that our missing poultry had gone from time to time, and would hear weird, creepy chuckle and other noises coming from the barn. Tammy and her family would eventually move away. Bit interesting, this is not the end of the story. A curious thing about the case is at the time this family had no idea that the previous family had experienced similar bizarre incidents, and she would later learn from them. Ben others the same area who had encountered with the same sort of creature. In the meantime, she would continue to experience strange phenomena regarding the gnome even after moving. She would elaborate on all of this in one comment in the site, Weird Fresno, in which she says, I called it a gnome, as that is what it resembles to me, but it did not move only about a half a mile down the road and still within the Tool River running behind us. I did not know when I moved here that some of my neighbors had experiences with this creepy gnome way before I told my story. They were run out of the river by a thing twice in 2 different locations, and it had happened for several months. We have started having the same experience we did at the other place. We have heard the creepy cackly laugh, heard something running around the house one night as I was laying on the couch. I heard something running very fast across my front deck. It hit the gate so hard that it flew even open. The thing running was too heavy to be a cat, but also too fast to be a human. Another night I was laying on the couch and I noticed something moving out of the corner of my eye deck. The mini blinds were down, but not shut. I saw that creepy gnome or red hat standing next to the shelf on my deck, where I kept my yard ornaments, fairies and things like that, which have gone missing. I closed the slats on the mini blind with my hand, and the curtain was pulled away from the slider. I did not see it, but I knew it was looking at me through the open curtain. I tried to lie really still, and when my grandson came in, I told him what happened. He pulled the curtain closed. He looked around outside, but only found some small footprints on a white shelf that was in our storage shed. He was taking small trinkets from our garden. A new family would move into Tammy's previous house in 2010, and adding to the whole bizarre story is that in 2011, author and paranormal investigator Jason Offit got into contact with one of the new owners of the house, Charlie Thomas, who had also had a strange story to tell, claiming that her family and her were also being terrorized by the gnome-like creature. She claimed that the family had been taunted with eerie singings and chanting coming from outside of their windows at night, and they too immediately noticed that there was something weird going on with that decrepit old barn. It would only escalate from there. One evening in the early morning hours, the couple woke to the sound of a raspy gurgling singing, which chilled them to the bone. When they looked at the window, they could see standing by a small pond on the property a creature standing about 3 feet high and wearing maroon pants and a baggy yellow shirt with a brown vest and a dark waistcoat. The thing was described as having a bushy gray beard and wearing a tall pointed reddish hat. The eyes of the gray beard and wearing the tall pointed reddish hat. The eyes of the being were said to be small and black, and its teeth were discolored, jagged and sharp, to the point of looking almost broken. The creature seemed to know it was being watched, and apparently started right back at them and started staring directly into their eyes. If they had the pond stocked, and it was down there and it was catching fish. The husband allegedly shouted it, "Go away!" It actually apparently gave him the finger before running off while laughing. When the area was examined later, a set of footprints were found that were about the size of a child's. Sorry about that, guys. The battery quit, but I remember where we were at. They were about the size of a child's shoe. It was without a doubt the most hideous sound I've ever heard. It freaked us out. Standing by my pond, holding one of my garden gnomes, was what I can only describe it as something out of a Grimm's fairy tale. The thing that was standing in our yard was hideous and grotesque. It stood illuminated under the motion detector light. It was less than 3 feet tall and had a long gray beard. It wore maroon pants, a baggy yellow shirt, brown vest, and a dark waistcoat again. I couldn't tell if it was wearing shoes or not, but it was wearing a reddish-brown pointed hat. The thing had made its creature really hideous with its eyes and teeth. It looked as if it was grinning, and its teeth were jagged and pointed. They were a little beady, dark, and mean. The thing, gnome, troll, whatever it was, knew we were looking at it, and it reached into the pond and grabbed a koi right in front of us. It dropped it in its mouth and swallowed it. We had noticed that every time we put fish in our pond, they disappeared, and we thought it was the cats or raccoons eating them. After seeing that, I think the creepy little creature was eating our gnomes, or eating our koi fish. The creepy thing was apparently liked the pond because it would reportedly be seen there numerous times, always in the early morning hours at around 3 a.m., and often eating the fish within. It also rather amusingly seemed like playing with the garden gnome decorations that had been set up sometimes, even vandalizing them. Fed up with the strange intruder, the husband apparently took away the lawn ornaments and fish, which caused the gnome to one night throw a tantrum, stomping about and shouting out in the garbled, bizarre language. Wow. The thing would skirt around the house, banging on the walls and testing the locked doors at night, almost always at 3 a.m., Thomas would say. One night after we removed the fairies and the gnomes and fish from the yard, the creature showed up at the unusual time, or at the usual time, 3 a.m. When it showed up and found that the yard ornaments were gone and the fish were gone, it went crazy. It was yelling and screaming something that we could not understand, but we did understand that this thing was pissed and it wanted to know it. It had put up a doggy door in the back door, and it was big enough for our dogs to go through, and it would be big enough for that creature to go through as well. I took off running down the kitchen. As I got there, the dogs had started barking like crazy at the doggy door. If the creature can half run, half fly around the house, it's probably capable of flying up to the windows. A fear hit me. My husband said it was not flying up to the windows. There were scratch marks all over the house. It was climbing the sides of the house, looking in the windows at us with its claws. Nothing I had ever felt. I ran back to the twins' bedroom, where they were both sound asleep in their cribs. The last we heard of the creature was a very loud screeching, crackling sound. It was under the living room windows, and when my husband went out to check it out, he saw the top of the creature's hat under what we couldn't say. It was standing under the window. The Thomases would then move away, perhaps a wise decision, because knowing that it did not try to enter the doggy door was only probably because our dogs were there. We did see the doggy door push open slightly and seen it peek its beady eyes through the door at us that the dogs would normally use. Wow. We have moved away and have since not had any problems. We have later talked to some people that advised us that gnomes in your yard is not a good idea, that it attracts them for some reason. Koi ponds are also an attractant and food outside. I guess this would go also for cryptids, but the gnomes is really what bothered me. There you go, guys. They're saying putting gnomes out in your yard may attract them. That is really weird. Talking about it looking in the doggy door, trying the door handle, stuff like that. I think it was going to try to come in. They're lucky they had their dogs. My cousins went down to a place we always called Swinging Bridge. They were a lot older than me, and I wasn't able to go at the time. They were probably 16, 18 years old. And they would always walk down there and walk back. They'd done it for years. It was somewhere my mom and them even went. But one evening, they were a little later coming back, and they were chased by what they said were little men in the woods, and they were laughing and hiding behind the trees and smiling at them. And as they got closer to home, of course, they were scared and hurrying. It started throwing rocks and sticks at them, and it started laughing at them and things like that. They never went back. I'd like to go to that property. I can't get in. It's private property now, but I may be able to film it and show you guys in a short film. If you would like to see this area where this happened, I'd more than gladly go down there and film it as soon as I'm healed up from this procedure. But yeah, guys, I wanted to read this to you, let you all hear this encounter, and know that Friday night is going to be what we're going to be talking about. So hope to see you guys there. I will be watching in the sidelines. I will maybe be in the chat depending on how I feel, but I'll definitely be moderating and helping the guys come along. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner. Until next time, God bless.